If you're like me, you've spent a significant amount of time stumbling around the fishing section of your local Walmart, and chances are you've laid eyes on these lures right here. Tiny crankbaits that resemble bumblebees, grasshoppers, and crayfish. And if you're like me, you've wondered to yourself, do these baits actually even work? Well, in this video, I hope to answer that question. I'm going to buy a couple of these baits, and I'm going to test them thoroughly, and we're going to find out if these baits are any good.
That's wild. Like I mentioned, there are 4 different crankbaits we're going to take a look at today. First of all, we're going to take a look at the wee crawfish. We're also going to take a look at the deep variant of the wee crawfish. It has a slightly longer bill, so it should dive a little deeper. We are also going to take a look at the crick hopper. This is a grasshopper crankbait, pretty cool looking. And then the weirdest one of all, we are going to take a look at the bumblebee crankbait. Fun fact, I used to be obsessed with this lure when I was growing up. So hopefully this bait still holds up 11 years later. If any of the baits in this video interest you and you want to pick them up for yourself, there are Amazon affiliate links down in the description that you can use to purchase these. Again, if you buy something through those links, I get a little bit of kickback, and that helps support the channel and videos like this. The first crankbait that we're going to look at out of this group is probably the most popular micro crankbait that Rebel makes, and that is their little crawfish crankbait. I actually really like the shape and design of this bait a lot, and the action that this bait has in the water is really good. It's got a very aggressive side-to-side action with a slight roll to it, puts off a lot of flash, and overall the profile under the water I think does a good job at imitating a crawfish.
What's this out here? Something stuck to this log.
Let's see what it is.
Ha! Look at that. Now that's funny. That is the same bait that I'm using. That's hysterical. That's somebody else knows what's up. They're using these Rebel crawfish lures.
Back in the day, I used to fish with this bait all the time. I thought it was amazing. I even caught like a 5-pound bass out of a lake with this tiny little bait. But in recent years, I haven't really fished with this bait a whole lot until making this video, and I have to say, this is just a solid option when it comes to a little crankbait you can fish on ultralight. This bait's gonna catch a wide variety of fish.
There we go. Ooh, what is this? Whoa. Oh, is that a walleye? Whoa! Walleye? Oh my word, dude. I didn't know there was saugeye and walleye in here. That's wild. Look at that, guys. Beautiful saugeye right there. Hit that tiny little crawfish crankbait. That is so sick. I didn't know there was saugeye even in here.
It's like middle of the day, 80 plus degrees, really hot out, and the fact that I just pulled a saugeye out of this little creek here, super awesome, super bonus catch. Was not expecting to get something like that. I really don't have anything bad to say about this bait other than the fact that it's a little bit light, so it makes it a little bit challenging to cast far. So it doesn't quite cast as far as some other crankbaits in this size range that have a little more weight to them. On 4-pound test on an ultralight, I can get this bait out quite a ways. It's just not quite as far as some other baits. This bait, like I said, is somewhat popular. I've seen people use it around, especially if you fish a lot of creeks and rivers. This is a solid option. Can't go wrong with the little wee craw. The next bait I want to talk about in this group is one of the weirder looking ones, and that is the cricket hopper. This lure has been around for a long time, and honestly, I never really gave this lure that much attention. I never really fished with it. I always fished with the little crawfish. That was my jam. This bait came back on my radar, however, when I was doing a fishing battle against Kendall Gray. Kendall Gray actually gave me one of these baits to use in the battle. This bait proved to be very effective during the fishing battle. I'm not going to spoil it. Check it out. I will link it up in the cards or down in the description. It was a ton of fun. I mean, I was fishing against Kendall Gray. That's pretty sick. But after that experience, I came away with a new respect for this little bait, and that's why I want to take a look at it today. The first thing that I noticed about this bait once I put it in the water is the fact that it has a very aggressive side-to-side action, which I think is very cool and somewhat unique. This is a shallower running bait, and if you actually fish this bait slow enough, you can fish it basically like a little wake bait under the surface, which is very cool. Now, if you don't like this obnoxious yellow color or the classic chartreuse green with the red eyes, Rebel has a number of other more realistic colors that you can use for more finesse situations. However, I really like some of the more gaudy colors. I think it adds a lot of character to the bait, and the fish don't seem to mind because these things catch fish.
There we go. Cricket hopper. Strikes. What do we got? Ooh, nice bluegill, actually.
Gorgeous bluegill right there on that yellow cricket hopper.
Is that a bass? Bro, what the world? Okay.
That's hysterical. This micro little rock bass hit the cricket hopper.
Another saw guy here.
Heyo. Show you guys. Nice little saw guy. Saw guy go bye-bye. Caught it on this little cricket hopper. The green and chartreuse one out of this same pool. One interesting thing that I noticed when using this bait is that panfish respond really, really well to this bait. I don't really know why. I caught more bluegill and panfish like rock bass on this bait versus the little crawfish. It is super fun to crush big bluegill on an ultralight rod and reel with this little crankbait. Now, obviously, this crankbait is gonna catch a wide variety of species. There's no doubt in my mind that I could catch a smallmouth bass or even a largemouth bass with this thing. Can we also just appreciate how cool this bait looks too? I love the design. I think it's so cool and playful and unique, and this bait catches fish. Awesome. This next bait that I tested is probably the weirdest looking bait out of all of these. That is the Bumblebee crankbait. Very weird design, very interesting design to say the least. This bait even comes with little plastic wings coming out the side and bulging eyes in the front. Believe it or not, back in the day I used to be absolutely obsessed with this lure. I thought it was the greatest crankbait ever created. This was one of the first kind of micro small crankbaits that I started throwing, and I remember I had really good success with this bait. So this bait is somewhat nostalgic for me. I think it looks really weird and really cool at the same time, but practically, how does it function as a crankbait? Well, for starters, the bait does have a great action in the water. It's got a very aggressive side-to-side action. Again, like almost all these baits, the action is solid. It puts off a lot of vibration. When compared to the cricket hopper, this bait actually gets down a little bit deeper in the water column. This bait turned out to be a little bit more frustrating to use than I remember. One of the main problems I have with this bait is the fact that after you cast it out and the bait hits the water, you actually have to give this bait a second or two before you start retrieving so that the bait can actually right itself in the proper position. So you actually have to give it a second or two for it to right itself, and then you're off to the races. Another problem I have with this bait is the fact that sometimes it just lands upside down and it will not right itself. It'll just stay there. I have a feeling that these frustrations have something to do with these wings right here, not allowing the bait to right itself, or if it lands upside down, not allowing the bait to flip over. One other frustration that I found with this bait is for some reason, it tends to tangle up in my line quite a bit. And again, I think this has something to do with these wings. It's not very aerodynamic, so it tends to tumble through the air when you cast it, and that'll get tangled up. So this bait is definitely the most frustrating out of all of these baits to use. But if you can work around the frustrations, it's a solid little crankbait. It's got really good action, and it catches fish.
Fish on the Bumblebee. A Bumblebee. The Bumblebee does it.
All right, boys. First fish on the Bumblebee. Nice little smallmouth. About average size for this river. I still have a special place in my heart for this weird Bumblebee. Finally, let's talk about this bait right here. This is the deep diving version of the wee crawfish crankbait thing. This bait is awesome. Essentially what it is just a deeper diving version of the wee crawfish. I was fishing a number of pools that were probably around 2.5 to 3 foot deep, and this bait had no problem getting all the way down to the bottom and kind of bouncing along. Initially when I picked this bait up, I was just like, all right, it's a deeper diving version of the little crawfish crankbait. How much better could it be? I have to say, this thing, in my opinion, is better than the original just because you get a little bit extra depth out of it.
There we go. Oh! There's a smallie right there. Oh, there he is. Aggressive little guy. There we go. Ooh, good one. Really nice one. It's a better fish. They are munching this morning. Beautiful bronze back right there.
Again, what's so great about this bait is the fact that it has that petite crawfish design, but it just dives 1.5 to 2 feet deeper than the original, and I think that is so great. There are a lot of times when I'm fishing a deeper pool like behind me, or even deeper rapids, and I want to get down to the bottom. I want to bounce off those rocks, and some of these other crankbaits like the little grasshopper, the Bumblebee, or even the original crawfish won't quite get down to the bottom. This bait fits the bill.
Here we go. Oh yeah, drum. Otherwise known as sheephead. Drum right there. All right, just switched up to the deep version of this little crawfish bait here. Let's see what this does. I'm curious. This pool does have some deep spots, and this bait can get down right along the bottom. And if there's more saugeye in here, that would be awesome. Let's see, we got something else. Let's see what we got. No way. No way, dude. Another saugeye? What is happening? I'm hitting overload. Sorry, guys. I did not expect there to be a bunch of saugeye in here. First cast with this little crankbait. Again, the little crawfish one. Smoked this saugeye out of here.
Now, one thing that I did notice about this bait is that the action isn't quite as aggressive as the shallow diving version. This one has a little bit more of a tight wobble to it, but still, it's got plenty of action, puts off a lot of vibration. So before I pick my favorite crankbaits out of this group, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of downsides that I noticed while using these baits. Now, these are pretty minor, but there's still something to be aware of. The first thing is that these baits get knocked out of tune quite easily. All the baits that I tried today out of the package did run fairly straight, but after I caught a couple of fish or maybe banged them off some rocks, I did notice the tuning start to drift, and I did have to retune these baits in order to get them back in line. Now, when it comes to tuning these baits, it can be a little bit finicky to get them running just right again, so that's something to keep in mind. These baits do get knocked out of tune fairly easily, which is kind of a downside. Another thing that I noticed about these baits is that the lips tend to be made of soft plastic, and you will notice after fishing these baits around a lot of rocks that the lip itself starts to kind of get worn away, and that can actually affect the tuning of this bait a little bit. So again, that is something to be aware of. You're gonna have to kind of tune these baits and keep them running straight. But if you're able to do that, they do provide really, really good results. Another quick thing I want to mention when it comes to fishing these baits is that you don't really want to fish them in super fast current. These baits perform the best in slower to moderate moving water. If you fish them in really fast current, they tend to kind of pinwheel and kind of ricochet around, and the action's not super great. So just be aware of that. These baits are best fished at a slow retrieve speed and moderate to slow water. So after a day of fishing with these baits and testing them out, which ones are my favorite? Well, I have to pick two. First of all, I have to pick this guy right here. The little cricket hopper is way better than I thought it would be. It's so good. I love the little compact design. The action's really cool. The colors are also kind of sick. I caught a nice saugeye with this bait. That is so cool. This guy right here also makes my favorite list, the deep diving version of the wee crawfish. It really fills a gap that I've had in my tackle box. That being a small compact crankbait with really good action that I can actually get down to depth when I'm fishing these deeper pools. This bait does a great job. In my opinion, both these baits are must-haves if you do a lot of creek and river fishing, or if you like fishing with an ultralight setup. Again, I've been using the ultralight today. I've been throwing these baits on 4-pound test mono on an ultralight rod. These baits really thrive on a lighter setup. I would not really recommend throwing these little baits on a heavier rod and reel. So guys, there you go. I had a lot of fun fishing with these little baits today, testing them out, and I have to say, I love these things. Even though there is a couple of downsides like the tuning and the lips not being super sturdy, these baits actually catch quite a bit of fish. I was very impressed. I caught a wide variety of species. If you guys want to pick up any of these baits for yourself, I will have Amazon affiliate links down in the description as to where you can do so. Again, if you buy something through those links, I get a little bit of kickback, and that helps support the channel. Again, thank you so much for watching. This is Brendan Miller. Stay hooked. I'll see you later.